Hello guys and welcome back to Survivor. Today I'm doing a short video covering a topic that might be interesting to you. I'm going to walk you through a list of games that does not work on the Pimax 8K and Pimax 5K Plus, and also games that has graphical glitches or issues using with the wide field of view Pimax headsets. Throughout this whole Pimax 8K M1 beta phase this summer, I spent more than 3 months testing and evaluating VR games on the 8K M1 unit, with a list of totally more than 400 different VR titles tested, including Steam VR titles, Oculus Home games, VR mods, Vorpex and much more. Ever since the beginning of September, I have also been using the final versions of the Pimax 8K and 5K Plus, so with totally more than 4 months of daily VR grinding, I have learned basically everything about these headsets, and while the game compatibility and performance has dramatically improved over the time with the new title updates, I can tell you there are still a few issues to be found. Today I revisited a bunch of VR games that I have been struggling with a lot ever since the Pimax 8K M1 beta phase, and surprisingly enough, a handful of these games still have issues today. Let me begin by saying no, you really do not need to worry about the VR game compatibility using the Pimax 8K or the 5K Plus. The game compatibility is surprisingly good, and as I told you before in my full Pimax 8K and 5K Plus review, I estimate 97% of all Steam VR games being fully supported by the Pimax, with high resolution, with wide field of view and a perfect gameplay and good performance, as long as you have a decent graphic card to power it, of course. Most of the Oculus Home games works perfectly as well, either using Revive or the Python My Games launcher, and yet today I have not found any popular and big Oculus Home exclusive game not being able to run on the Pimax. So all in all, Pimax does really work great with games overall, but we still have a bunch of VR games that struggles on the Pimax, and I think it's time for me to let you know all about them. But before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up on this video, check out my other Pimax related videos, and stay tuned for a lot more Pimax videos and benchmarks coming up. I would like to give a huge thanks to all my lovely Patreon supporters, and a special thanks to my 3 awesome official sponsors on Patreon: Commander Darklight, Art Armin and VR Ambassador. So now let's get to the point. I will start off by showing you the games that basically are unplayable on Pimax 8K and 5K Plus as of today. Afterwards, I will also list a few games having issues and graphical glitches that you might want to know about as well. First off, Vanishing of Ethan Carter, a beautiful first-person story-driven game focused on exploration and discovery, having full VR support with Steam VR. It's really a super atmospheric game with amazing graphics and realistic scenery. Problem is, on Pimax you won't be able to enjoy it. The problem is the game resolution. It's extremely low. No matter how much you try adjusting the in-game render scale to max, no matter how much you fiddle around with Python render quality slider, and no matter what Steam VR super sampling you use, the game just renders in low resolution. I spent an hour today really trying to get it to work, but it's impossible, I guess. I started by pushing the in-game render scale to max, which is 130%, using Python at 1.0 and SteamVR at 100% super sampling. Vanishing of Ethan Carter is so low resolution so you can hardly distinguish anything of 5 meters away. It's blocky, it's blurry and totally unplayable. Text is almost unreadable, and on top of that, the subtitles are rendered incorrectly in each eye, so you have like a double subtitle layer. The only way to read the subtitles is by closing one of your eyes. But hey, I was not planning to give up yet. I turned up the SteamVR super sampling to 300% and the resolution got slightly better, but still far from acceptable. Now I can see a bit further away, but everything on distance looks really bad, and even close-up objects feels blurry. Text is a little bit more readable, but I would never play this game in this resolution. It looks much worse than it did on my HTC Vive. So why not try bumping up the Python render skate value? Well, I tried with 1.5 and 2.0 and got the same problem. In fact, it got even worse. For some reason, using higher Python render quality value than 1.0 makes the resolution even lower. It's quite hilarious. I tried Python 1.5 and 2.0 with SteamVR super sampling 100%, 300% and even 500%, but totally in vain. It just looked horrible. The more I push the resolution, the worse it gets. Oh, and I know what you're thinking. How about lowering down the resolution then? Well, I tried that as well. Using Python at 0.5 or 0.75 with any SteamVR super sampling makes it actually better looking than anything above 1.0 for some strange reason, but still, the game just looks horrible and for me it's totally unplayable. You may even think it looks okay in this footage, but I promise you it does not in VR. I'm not sure what's really causing this. Maybe it's the game engine not getting the correct resolution from the headset, or maybe some other conflict between the game engine and Pimax, but one thing is for sure, it needs to be fixed. This game would have been a blast on the Pimax 8K and 5K Plus with all the lovely surroundings, but unfortunately we will need to wait for either the Pimax team or the game developers to solve this. Until then, the Vanishing of Ethan Carter remains uninstalled on my PC. Next up, Pro Fishing Challenge. This is an Oculus Home title and one of the very few good fishing games available with motion controller support such as Oculus Touch. You can start off the game on your Pimax 8K and 5K Plus either by using Revive through Steam VR or by importing the game to your My Games library in Python software and launching it natively without Steam VR as render. But many times it will crash up and start up already, especially if you have Python render quality slider anything above 1.0. But even with Python at 1.0 and any Steam VR super sampling value, the game will crash sooner or later. Sometimes when you jump into a boat, sometimes in the middle of the fishing session. And something is just definitely wrong here and needs to be fixed, because until then I cannot really enjoy Pro Fishing Challenge on my Pimax 8K nor the 5K Plus. The next game is also an Oculus Home game, which does not exist on Steam VR even. Minecraft VR. I know this game struggles for HTC Vive users as well using Revive, and with Pimax using Revive Launcher, you enter a loading screen as suddenly it says failed to load Minecraft. And there is nothing else you can do about it but just quit the game. I also tried the Python Mind Games launcher by importing the game executable file and starting off the game without Steam VR, but same story once again. The game does not allow you to play it on the Pimax. If you know any workaround, please let me know about it. The free-to-play Steam VR experience called Nefertari Journey to Eternity is a beautiful exploration game inside the ancient Nefertari's tomb. It's really a great experience, but unfortunately it crashes a lot. Sometimes on startup and sometimes after a few minutes. A few times it also ended up glitching out where my character ended up inside a wall or something. This actually never occurred when I was playing it on the HTC Vive before, so I guess there is a problem here with the compatibility issue with the Pimax headsets. So basically, these were the only 4 games I had found which does not work to play, feels unplayable or just crash too often to be playable on a Pimax 8K and 5K Plus, no matter what settings used. Now let's continue with 2 games that have specific issues with Pimax. Some of these issues might not be so serious and I'm sure many of you won't even bother, but for me personally I think these issues are quite frustrating, making it difficult to enjoy these games. Dirt Rally VR is one of them, and I'm not talking about the Steam VR version, I'm only talking about the Oculus Home version here. The Steam VR version of Dirt Rally works flawlessly, but Oculus Home version has a very frustrating issue with Pimax, and it's a shame because Oculus Home version also has slightly better performance and visuals compared to the Steam VR version. The problem is that the wide field of view is simply not supported. There is a rounded black mask layer in your view constantly, limiting the view to the Oculus Rift field of view around 100 degrees, which looks ridiculously small. And I'm serious now, even when using small field of view mode on the Pimax 8K or the 5K Plus, you lose a lot of the sides and peripheral vision. It's like looking through a pipe or a black hole or something. I have really tried to remove the mask by fiddling around in the game INI files or config files, but no matter what I did, the black round field of view mask just remains. I really cannot enjoy Dirt Rally on Pimax like this, and therefore I'm only using the Steam VR version for now. But it's still a shame, I think, as I really like the performance boost in the Oculus Home version, and also the anti-aliasing feels more efficient, making the maps look less jaggy and just much better looking on the Oculus version. Guys, if you find any way to remove this black mask, I would really appreciate if you let me know how to do it. The next game with an issue on the Pimax headset is Twin Roads, a game you most likely never tried because it's not a big title, but I actually made a video about it a long time ago playing it on the HTC Vive, I think. It's a lovely looking, fun and challenging 3D platformer in VR. It may not be Lucky's Tale, but I still find it to be a very fun VR game to play, and on Pimax it really looks lovely. The only problem is that the game has a built-in depth of field, and I'm not sure what's really causing it, but the shallow depth of field is just way too close to you compared to playing Twin Roads on any other VR headset. It might have to do something with the wide field of view of Pimax, but I also tried it with small field of view mode with same results. The shallow depth of field is not possible to disable in game settings, as I tested all presets available, and the blur created by the depth of field is most of the time blurring out at least half of what you see on the map. In some parts of the game it becomes totally unplayable, as you basically cannot see where you're going. Everything is just a blurry mess. You may be able to finish the game anyway, but I strongly recommend you to wait until a fix is out, because this only makes you frustrated and it kills the beautiful visuals that Twin Roads actually has in VR. Lastly, let's have a look at 3 different games that also has render resolution issues. These issues are definitely not as bad as when running Vanishing of Ethan Carter, and I must say you can fully enjoy all these 3 upcoming games, but you need to make a few adjustments. If you start up the 3 games on your new Pimax 8K or Pimax 5K Plus without making these adjustments, you might be very disappointed. If you just follow my recommendations now, you can make these games fully playable and good looking, or at least with acceptable resolution. Let's begin with Robinson The Journey, the Steam VR version of the game. I do not have the Oculus Home version of Robinson The Journey, so I'm not sure if this issue exists on Oculus, but when using Steam VR version, first time you start up the game it will look just horrible and extremely blurry and low resolution. No matter if you change the Python render quality value or Steam VR super sampling, nothing will help. On default settings, the game will look worse than it does on any other VR headset, and the objects just a meter away from you are even hard to distinguish. What needs to be done here is that you need to go into the game settings and turn up the in-game resolution scale to the maximum 2.0. Basically that's it. It may not sound like a problem, but this procedure is not really needed using any other VR headsets, so that's why I wanted to include this game in this video. Once you go in-game resolution scale of 2.0, Robinson The Journey becomes sharp and beautiful, just as expected on a high-end and high-resolution Pimax 8K or 5K Plus. Once again, I think it has something to do with the game engine, and while a fix really isn't needed, I would say it's good to know about this issue, that it actually exists. Otherwise people might get thrown off when they see how bad it looks at the first sight on the Pimax headsets. We have 2 more games to cover now, and the next one is Doom VFR. Let me just say that you do not need to worry. Doom VFR works on the Pimax 8K and 5K Plus, and the performance is not bad at all using a GTX 1080 Ti at least. The problem is the in-game resolution at distance. There is just something very wrong with Doom VFR game engine. Whatever Python render value I used, from 1.0 to 2.0, or even if the Steam VR super sampling is bumped up to 300 or even 500%, objects and everything at distance looks somehow low resolution and extremely jaggy. This is really weird, as up-close objects such as weapons and HUD or the heads-up display looks really sharp, but 20 or 30 meters away everything just looks terrible. I have really spent time trying to find out what's really wrong here, and the problem gets even bigger when you increase the sharpness slider in the game options. You might not really see it so obvious in this video, but believe me when I say it, in VR it really is straight up visible and very annoying, especially since we are using a high-resolution headset such as Pimax. Using regular TAA, FXAA or SMAA anti-aliasing won't help either, not until you crank up the maximum anti-aliasing possible, the TSSAA 8X. This blurs out and in some way evens out the jaggies, and far distance starts to look a little bit better, but in my opinion it's still not sharp. It's just that the anti-aliasing has smudged out the jaggies, I think. I really tried everything, and going from Pytool 1.0 to 2.0 makes hardly any improvement, and I would say it looks even better on Pytool 1.0 than it does on 2.0 for some reason, especially when using the Pimax 5K+. Anyways, Doom VFR is of course great looking, but I somehow miss the real sharpness and clarity in this game on distance compared to when playing it on the Samsung Odyssey, for example. And yes, the only fix for now seems to be the TSSAA 8x anti-aliasing, which partially helps, but it's not optimal, and upon that it lowers the frame rate using such an advanced anti-aliasing, which definitely shouldn't be needed, especially when using such a high resolution already. Lastly, we have EVE Valkyrie Warzone VR. This game has a very similar problem to Doom VFR and Robinson The Journey. It's an Unreal Engine game, just like Robinson, and when using Pytool 1.0, 1.5 or even 2.0, including whatever Steam VR super sampling possible ranging from 100 to 500%, things just looks very jaggy and aliased. On default, starting the game for the first time, you can hardly read anything in the main menus. I played around a lot in the in-game settings, including in-game super sampling set to maximum 175%, including different anti-aliasing methods. It just doesn't cut it. The game looks good indeed, but it's really frustrating to see all the distant objects or even your cockpit so aliased and jaggy all over the place. On top of that, it seems that using higher Pytool render quality than 1.0 doesn't even affect the game resolution at all, nor does the Steam VR super sampling for that matter, because the frame rate and performance is untouched and still perfect 80 or 90 frames per second most of the time, just like it is with Pytool 1.0. But just when I was about to give up on this, I found out that you can actually change the in-game super sampling in a config file hidden in a game directory under your Windows users folder, as shown here. Change the value from the highest possible selected 175 in-game to 250 or 300, go into game settings and disable anti-aliasing, and suddenly the game looks much better with noticeably less jaggies at distance. It may not be perfect still, but much better than before at least. Again, this might not be a huge issue after all, but if you start up EVE Valkyrie for the first time on your Pimax without doing these changes, you will get disappointed, as the sharpness and jagginess looks terrible at default. So guys, for now, this is my complete list of VR games I struggle with on my Pimax headsets, and I know there might be some other games having issues that I have missed. If I find any more non-working or buggy games running on the Pimax headset, I will for sure make a follow-up part 2 video. Big thanks for watching guys, and please leave a thumbs up on this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more VR and Pimax related content coming up here on Survivor. Once again, a huge thanks to all my Patreon supporters, and a special thanks to my official sponsors on Patreon, Commander Darklight, Art Armin and VR Ambassador. All your help really means a lot to me. Thank you guys. Have a lovely day now, and see you in my next video. Cheers!